there is a method that we can now use to create permanent world peace for the first time in human history. The method is very simple. Groups of young people practicing powerful technologies of consciousness together that directly enliven the unified field of natural law, the universal field of nature's intelligence, spreading waves of coherence and harmony in the collective consciousness of the nation, and dissolving the stress and strain and negativity in national consciousness, thus eliminating the very basis of conflict and war. Throughout human history, the wise have desired to eliminate war, which is really the greatest source of human suffering, age after age. But nothing has worked. Establishing treaties between nations has not worked. Establishing international organizations like the League of Nations and the United Nations has never worked. Even having a bigger army and bigger bombs has not worked to prevent war from arising. In fact, the 20th century was the most violent century in the history of the human race. Clearly, peace in the world begins with peace in individual life. If we dive within to the field of our inner silence, there is the ocean of bliss, and in the fulfillment of that state is fully established peace in individual life. The technique for this has been provided by the great sage from the Himalayas, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, in Transcendental meditation, to easily experience this inner silence, this inner bliss, this field of ineffable peace inside everyone. So if all 7 billion people of the world could have that experience, the world would be a peaceful place. But for 7 billion people to learn how to do that, that's a very big job. Fortunately, it has been found in 1974 that even when 1% of the population of a city or province or nation practice transcendental meditation and begin to experience this inner silence, this inner peace, the effect is felt in the whole environment and measurable in reducing crime and violence and accidents and sickness in the environment. So this means that even 70 million people experiencing that state could change the whole world completely. This effect, the field effect of consciousness, has been called the Maharishi effect, after Maharishi, who predicted it all the way back in 1962. But fortunately, there is even a further step that makes it simpler to create world peace. In the Vedic literature of ancient India, there is the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, which describe this phenomenon of how the silence of some individuals can create a powerful effect on the whole environment. Tat sanidao veret yagaha, the Patanjali Yoga Sutra says. In the vicinity of yoga, of union, of transcendence, hostile tendencies are eliminated. Conflict is eliminated around the people who experience that state. But Maharishi found in that text of Patanjali Yoga Sutras even a greater point for the world to know. And that is in the technique called sanyama that Patanjali brings out, which Maharishi has embodied in the simple practice, advanced practice of the Transcendental Meditation Siddhi program, including yogic flying. This very powerful technique really intensely enlivens the unified field. And when practiced in a group a group of people experiencing that all at the same time in the same place, the powerful enlivenment of the unified field is spreading instantaneously everywhere in the environment. This is from the level of the infinite correlation available at the level of the unified field. So what has been found is that if you can gather groups of these yogic experts, yogic flyers, practicing together, enlivening the unified field together, they can create such intense waves of peace and harmony, such powerful coherence in national consciousness, that all the tendencies to fight and conflict and be violent just begin to dissolve away in national life. This phenomenon has been tested again and again in modern times, as well as ancient times. And the scientific results have been published in 50 separate scientific papers on this phenomenon of the group practice of yogic flying, for example, in schools, by children in schools, creating this transformation of the environment into the environment of peace. But there's even a greater finding, that if that group is large enough, it can affect the whole world. This was demonstrated at Maharishi University of Management in Iowa, one such great center of group yogic flying, back in 1983, 1984, when 8,000 practitioners of yogic flying gathered together and practiced to provide a demonstration of the global effect. The figure 8,000 comes from a formula that the scientists have developed, the formula being that the square root of 1% of a population practicing this technique together is enough to produce measurable changes, increasing peace and harmony in the collective consciousness. Dr. John Hagelin, great quantum physicist of Maharishi University of Management, explains that this effect is created because those individuals practicing these advanced technologies of consciousness brought to light by Maharishi have a very direct effect at the level of the unified field itself, the universal field of nature itself. This is the power of this program. It's no more talking about peace, arguing about peace, having meetings about peace. It is the creation of peace from the level of peace itself, as directly experienced by the yogic flyers practicing in groups. So now we have this result. 8,000 together, the square root of 1% of the world's population, produced a measurable effect on harmony between nations, harmony between the Soviet Union and the United States, reduction of crime, reduction of terrorism and war deaths, and improvement of economies all over the world during a 3-week period. With that, we have the demonstration, clear scientific demonstration, that this is something we can do to change the whole trajectory of the world towards permanent world peace. Other examples are President Joaquim Chissano of Mozambique introduced the program of Transcendental meditation to 18,000 soldiers in his army, and 3,000 became yogic flyers to bring an end to the civil war and the drought of Mozambique. And it worked. And simultaneously across the border in South Africa, apartheid ended. In Cambodia, Samdech Chia Sim, the patriarch of the ruling political party, created a Maharishi Vedic University where all the students became yogic flyers. And each new wave of yogic flyers, more of the Khmer Rouge gave up until they had all given up, and peace was restored to Cambodia. Again and again, there are clear demonstrations of the power of this. So the greatest work that can be done in the world right now is in every nation to create a school where all the children are yogic flyers, as they've done now in Mexico, in Oaxaca, the southern province, with 137 schools have introduced the program. In Colombia, where 37 rehabilitation schools with Father Mejia have introduced. In Ecuador, where all the military schools have introduced. Like that, every nation should now create yogic flying schools. They study all the normal subjects, but in the morning and the afternoon, they dive deep within to experience their own inner bliss, make their brain waves coherent, integrate their mind and body, and instantly spread harmony and peace to the nation. And the second great task is that on a global scale, we should have a group large enough to affect the whole world. The location of this group will be at the center point of India, from which this ancient knowledge came. And there the goal is to have 16,000 yogic flyers. It's double the size, actually, double the size of the requirement of 8,000, just to be safe, to have double that requirement. And from that one spot, all the patches of stress and darkness and violence left in the world will be filled with light, and there will be no tendency anymore for any nation to want to attack any other nation. People who are doing wrong things, waking up in the morning now and thinking, maybe I'll do something more positive today. I'll do something positive today instead. So this is the technology, and there has never been any other technology that creates this effect. So here it is before us, on the ancient level of the Vedic knowledge, on the modern level of scientific research and application, and we all desire an end to the misery of war and the poverty that comes with war and the fear that comes with war. So the task before us is to create the big group in India and then groups in the United States and in every nation of the world that will bring permanent peace to the individual nations and permanent peace for the whole human race, generation after generation.